inspiring and informative. The Design Your Success podcast, brought to you by lbsuccess.com. This is your weekly show that leaves you motivated and ready to take action so you can create the life and business you desire. Now, here is your host, Nancy Gathesha.
Welcome to episode number 64. All our new listeners and our faithful subscribers, thank you so much for tuning in. This is the podcast where you're inspired to live a life of purpose, passion, and profits. So we normally kick off our show with a quote, a question, or a comment. And today we have a comment from Zig Ziglar. He was very influential as far as the personal development space is concerned, and his writings have influenced my way of thinking a lot. And so his quote goes like this: repetition is the mother of learning and the father of action, which makes it the architect of accomplishment. So today being about 7 days to Valentine's Day, I thought we'd do something a little bit different. And so we have an interview. Now hold that quote, about repetition being the mother of learning. Just hold it. And at the end of the interview, we'll see how this is related to Valentine's. Whether you're single or you're already in a relationship, or even you're a father, you have some daughters. Basically, whoever you are, I believe this interview will be a blessing to you or to somebody you know. It's not always about us. Sometimes you can hear something and you think, oh no, I already know that. I don't need that. But maybe you know somebody who does. And can we both agree that we could all benefit from healthier relationships or more fulfilling relationships? Relationships are like a garden. You can't just plant something once and decide I'm done. Weeds are going to come. You need to water it. You need to nurture it. And it's the same with our relationships. We need to nurture them. And if you're thinking, oh, Nancy, I don't even have a relationship to nurture right now, and please don't bring up Valentine's because I don't have a Valentine's date, hang with me, because by the end of this interview, I think you will have a bit of a different perspective that's going to make you approach the fact that you might be single from a different but positive perspective. My guest today is a highly sought after professional speaker. He's a certified life and relationships coach, and he's also the author of the award-winning book, God, Where Is My Boaz? So, Stephan Labossiere, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really, really delighted to have you on the call, especially after I read your book. I've been listening to you quite a bit and also following you on social media. You have some amazing insights as far as relationships is concerned. Was there a particular incident or a particular situation that inspired you to become a relationships coach?
I wouldn't say it was any specific incident. It was more so me getting closer to God and me starting to realize how many people are hurting when it comes to relationships and how many people need assistance. And it was just me pretty much praying and figuring out that this was my purpose and this is the direction I need to go in. So I can't say it's one specific event, maybe more so a culmination of events that put that direction.
Right. Okay. Your book is addressed to women, I believe, but you also have a book for men. We'll get to that a little bit later. Why is it that it's often us who well, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but do you find that it's often women who have to kind of deal with issues as far as relationships is concerned?
No, both men and women deal with plenty of issues. It's just that it's more acceptable for women to be vocal about their issues and for women to seek help for their issues, whereas men are more likely to keep it bottled up and keep it in secret. I mean, I get plenty of emails from men who are suffering in relationships or in the dating process, so to speak. So everywhere, everybody, either gender is experiencing issues. It's just gender is much more comfortable in being vocal about it.
I like the way you said it's more acceptable for women to be vocal about it. That's a key word right there, acceptable. As far as, you being a relationships coach, then you talk to thousands, you've talked to a lot of people. And do you also find that men are willing to then receive that advice if they seek it out, which I think is pretty bold? I admire men who are willing to get some support in this kind of issues. So do you find that the men are actually willing then to take the advice and implement it as compared to women?
When we're talking about the men who are actually seeking out the advice, yes. To be quite honest with you, I have to say that the men who already are seeking out the advice clearly have let go of their pride. They're not letting pride get in the way, which is what allowed them to come reach out and ask for help in the first place. And because of that pride being put to the side, they're much willing and quicker to actually implement the advice given. Whereas with a lot of women, I'm not saying there are plenty of women who are seeking out and willing to implement the advice. However, I will say, especially in the structure of marriage or couples coaching, the women seem to be a little more resistant. They seem to rather look to explain the issue, but they're still kind of fighting depending on what the advice is. If the advice is about things that they need to do, it's a little resistant because chances are they've been holding on to a lot of stuff as well. And they have so much either resentment or negative energy that their pride is still kind of in the way. It's like even though the woman is seeking out or willing to listen, she's still a little more pride up. Whereas the man, for him to actually go to someone, he's already pride to the side.
That's interesting. Another thing that I found about your book is that you keep it so real. Some of the things I was reading, I was like, ouch, but you have a kind of a velvet glove. So it doesn't hurt so much. It is the truth. And you bring it over in a very, compassionate kind of loving way that one notices, okay, he's not judging me or beating me over the head with the Bible. So you said that women sometimes have this pride. One of the things I picked up from what you do and how you help people is you work with people who can and who are ready to handle the truth.
Yes.
Now, as far as ready to handle the truth, your book is called A Woman's Guide, or the subtitle is A Woman's Guide to Understanding What's Hindering Her from Receiving the Man and the Love that She Deserves. Are there some self-sabotaging tactics to, avoid dealing with the issues that need to be addressed?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have to understand that women tend to have more people around them who will appease them. And what I mean by that is if a woman is struggling with dating or with relationships, she'll have other women and sometimes even other men saying to her, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. You just haven't met the right one. They just can't handle you. You're just a strong woman. They'll want to appease her and build her up, even though that's actually not helping her. That's making matters worse. So by the time she gets to someone like me, for and come out and say, no, there is something wrong on your end. There is something that you need to improve upon. That's a hard swallow. Whereas, again, to kind of go back to the men real quick, people are much more willing to tell the man, yeah, maybe you do need to improve the way you dress, or maybe you do need to learn how to talk to women better. There's a little more willingness to tell them, yeah, there's some things you need to tighten up. And that's why I think that leads to them not being as resistant when they do actually come to somebody seeking help. But yes, back to the women, definitely there are self-sabotaging things that are hindering them. And sometimes they're very, subconscious, and you don't even realize what you're doing, or you don't understand how this is an issue. There are a lot of women who are not connecting with what the issue is that is clear. I'll have women come to me saying, I'm doing everything right and nothing's working. No, that's not true. No one is doing everything right and can't even get someone to approach them.
Wow. There goes the truth.
Something off, and we have to be willing to sit down, examine it, be honest about it, because if not, you'll never get better results.
That's true. There's a quote that says if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you keep getting the same results. That's very true. You mentioned something just a few seconds ago about women being given advice, either from other women or from other men, telling them you're doing okay, you're a strong woman, you just have to wait for the right man. Picking up on that part of a strong woman, I'm from Africa. I'm from Kenya. And, I was brought up with the old traditional roles of men and women having, different roles, and the man being the head of the family. And obviously now I'm living in Germany and it's a bit different. The girl child has been empowered and educated. And there's a realization that actually the boy child was kind of neglected in the process. Do you find that is, it works against us, this thing of the girl child being empowered?
To some extent, yeah, it does. Again, there's nothing wrong with empowering young women. I think that's an awesome thing. I would never speak against that. However, as pointed out, in placing so much focus in empowering the young woman, we've neglected the young man. And perfect example is if something happens to a young man, a lot of times they're told, suck it up, be a man, crying, get it together. Whereas the woman the young girl is more likely to be encouraged, talk it out, discuss it, and they're going to pour into them the confidence and encouragement they need to do better. That doesn't always happen with young boys. There's a disconnect emotionally. So these young men sometimes grow up without the foundation they need to truly grow and make progress in their life. So we don't want to stop encouraging young women, but we have to make sure we're not forgetting about the young men as well. And we have to also teach women to understand that, yes, being capable and powerful and confident and knowing that you can stand on your own 2 feet is an awesome thing. However, if you want to have an amazing relationship, then you have to ask yourself, do you want to be the leader in your relationship for the rest of your life? Do you
That's good.
want to be the head of the household? Because the reality is that a lot of women, they prefer for the man to be the leader. A lot of women, even the ones who fight for their equality and their respect, they don't want to be with a man who's going to disrespect them, take advantage of them, not acknowledge them. However, if a man is willing to acknowledge, respect, love, cherish that woman, she has no problem can be the leader. And if he's fully capable, in most situations, she loves that. She wants to see a man who can take charge and handle his business. So be mindful of, if that's what you truly want, then you can't be taking the reins from him all the time, because you are going to set the stage for him to take the backseat to you. And that's going to lead to him not being as proactive as he should be in your relationship. And it's going to lead to you being more frustrated and an unhealthy or unhappy relationship.
That's good. It's a form of self-sabotage, even when someone may not even be aware of it. Like you said, keep taking the reins all the time. That's good. That's really good. As a relationship coach, Stefan, what are some issues? And I read your book. I think I must have read about 3 times or something. So if I keep quoting it again, I think it's brilliant. What are some issues that you see, people overlooking as far as their own struggles are concerned, when it comes to having or finding those healthy relationships that people desire? So what are some issues that you find people tend to overlook?
Their lack of healing, the fact that they have not truly healed from their past relationships or their childhood or their family relationships. There's so much they're holding on to. And what society tends to do is they tend to move past but not resolve. So it's what I call, like, they essentially stuff everything in their emotional closet. Okay. And put everything in the closet and they lock the door and they think, okay, well, I'm fine, I'm over it. No, it's still there. It's still in your closet. And all it's going to take is one little thing to knock that door open and everything comes flooding out. And then you have a big problem on your hands. To stop just stuffing it in the closet and thinking that we can ignore it and distract ourselves from it. And it's actually work through the issue, resolve it, throw it away for good, so that it no longer haunts us in our life or no longer has the impact that it's been having, even when we don't realize it's affecting our lives and our ability to have a great relationship.
Somebody called it junk in the trunk. A lot of people are just driving around with, and you open the trunk and you're like, oh my goodness, what is all that? You talk a lot about in your book, and you've just mentioned now healing, that you find that a lot of people kind of overlook that. What are some steps that you advise people to take to get on that journey of healing?
Well, first, you have to be willing to be honest with yourself about who hurt you. Sometimes I'll have clients make a list of all the people who have hurt them, not necessarily the small, insignificant situations, but anything that even comes to mind. If it comes to mind, that means it's significant. It's significant enough for it to still be in your memory. You should write it down, because we have to address these things one by one. It's really risky, not even risky business. It is dangerous to ignore these things, even the ones that you don't think should be a problem anymore. So I think just being honest, write it down, get it out in front of you, let you see who these names are, let you remember specifically who did what, so we can properly address it. And of course, this is always a part of the process, but I think what's important for people to understand is forgiveness is not a snap of the fingers thing. It is not okay, I forgive them, so now I'm done. Forgiveness sometimes takes practice. It takes repetition. It takes you constantly reminding yourself that you are going to move past this, or you're going to not dwell in this, that you have let it go, that you are moving forward into better things. You have to through those negative moments, because no matter how many times I say I forgive today, I'm human, and it could resurface later until I really learn to put it away once and for all. And that sometimes takes time. It is a process for a lot of people.
That's really good. It's a decision. We make the decision. I'm going to forgive that person. I forgive that person. And then an emotion comes up and we think, oh, if I'm feeling that way, it must mean I haven't forgiven them, which is really not true. The emotions will follow with time. It's a decision that we make, like you just said. Stefan, your name, by the way, your second name, I know this is kind of off topic, but it kind of sounds French.
It is. It's French.
It is? Cool. All right. I was curious about it the whole time, and now it just kind of popped out. Let's talk about God. Your book, of course, it's faith-based, and you approach it from a biblical perspective. And you just said now that one of the steps that people can take to get on the road to healing, if I understood you correctly, is forgive. Because there's some things maybe they're not even aware of, whether it was their family or their childhood. Many women might have daddy issues. They had maybe not very healthy relationships with their fathers. Do you find that spills over? Does that affect how women might be approaching relationships and actually even sabotaging their own relationships?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Daddy issues are real. I mean, if you pay attention, people always make jokes about the woman who is sexually promiscuous or the woman who is an exotic dancer. You'll hear them say, oh, she must have daddy issues. People aren't making those jokes because it's a lie. The reality is that in a lot of cases it has an effect. And that's more extreme cases I'm giving you. But however, it affects women at a lower level or just in how they're handling their relationships, the type of man they're allowing to their life. Like I've had clients where they had fathers that were very emotionally disconnected. And next to them, they're ending up with men who are very emotionally disconnected. There is a correlation there, and you have to look at it. So it's very important to not ignore daddy issues and also understand that not only do people have daddy issues, they have mommy issues too. I think that doesn't get talked about enough. I can't tell you how many situations where the problem was not with the father, it was with the mother. Ooh, and that's having a huge impact on their life and their relationship. So parental issues, period, need to be addressed if we're going to help people get to a better place.
That's a good point, which would be then my next question then. We women, okay, we can work on the daddy issues or the relationships which are now affecting our relationship with God because God is a father ultimately. What about men? What are some things that fathers can actually do to help their daughters so that as they grow up, they're able to discern healthy relationships?
Well, the father has to establish healthy, loving relationships with their daughters. Fathers have to understand that daughters are little women in training. She has emotions just like a wife would have. She has concerns and needs just like any other woman would have. Just because she's a young lady doesn't change the fact that she needs your attention. She needs your love. She needs your time. She needs a shoulder to cry on sometimes. A father has to be mindful of that because he sets the example. If he creates a loving, healthy relationship with his daughter, it's going to be much easier for her to recognize unhealthy, toxic relationships. It's going to be much easier for her not to fall into less than she deserves because she knows the example her father set, and she knows what it's like to be loved and cared for by a man. So fathers have to be that first husband almost, so to speak, in the sense of how they just set the example and showing their daughters love and compassion and all the things that they need and being able to communicate with their daughters as well. Too many fathers are in the house, but they're not there. You understand? It's like, your physical presence is seen. However, your emotional presence is not felt whatsoever. And that needs to change if we want to help young women have healthier relationships when they grow up and better relationships overall.
That's good. Do you feel that the way the husbands or the fathers treat their wives or their partners also makes the daughters or the children see, okay, that's the standard?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it can have all kinds of different effects. So it's not a one size fit all as far as how it will impact the child. However, yes, there are women who, if their mother was physically abused, will become conditioned to thinking that physical abuse is in some ways acceptable in their relationship, or the emotional neglect that they witnessed their mother having. Or there's even situations where because the daughter witnessed the mother having such a horrible relationship, she figures as long as she has something better than that, she shouldn't complain. It's almost like, even though I'm not in love with this man, and even though I know this is absolutely best for me, it's better than what my mother ever had, so let me accept it. You know, I should be grateful because, you know, my mother and others haven't been so fortunate. And that's the wrong way to look at it, but it happens. So it can have varying effects on young women as far as how they receive it and how it projects to their future relationships.
Picking up on what you've just said now, that was really deep. That you think as far as long as I don't have what my mother had, what I have is good enough. You know, I'll settle for that. Which brings us back to the title of your book. It says, A Woman's Guide to Understanding What's Hindering Her from Receiving the Man and Love She Deserves. And the key word there is deserve. As far as you coaching people or working with different people, do you feel that sometimes women actually settle for less than they deserve, or they're not even sure what they deserve in the first place? So they just, you know, lump it onto God. It's in God's hands, you know. What's your opinion about that?
Too many women don't know their value, or have not embraced their value, or have not started walking in their value. You know, I think we get into the habit of telling women they're all queens. The reality is that every woman as she currently stands is not a queen. However, she is...
Wait. Explain that a little. That is the truth right there with velvet gloves.
The thing is, she is not projecting herself as a queen. She does not carry herself as a queen. She is not loving and supporting as a queen should be. She has not evolved into the woman that she can be. So she is not currently, as she stands, a queen. However, she is capable of taking her rightful place as queen. You see, she just needs to be prepared and be willing to embrace the process and the growth in her life to take her rightful seat. But as she currently stands, no, we're quicker to say those types of things about men. But we, as if women are not below quality. Like, you know, I have to say this. This is kind of not off topic, but it ties in. In the States, there's certain African-American cities where they talk about the ratio of men to women being so far off. Like, I'm based out of Atlanta, and you'll hear people say the ratio is 10 to 1, 20 to 1. These ridiculous numbers that are so not true. And when they create these equations, these numbers, one of the criteria is that they'll say, okay, there's a lot of men who are homosexual. There's a lot of men who are in jail. There's a lot of men who don't meet a certain level of quality. And they'll eliminate these men, and that's what makes the numbers so lopsided. However, I say to them, so are you saying every woman is of quality? Why don't we remove women from the list based on their unacceptable quality? It's like we don't seem to want to look at it that way. We only want to see men as being below par, but we don't accept that, yes, there are a lot of women who are not as good as they think they are, who have not reached the level they can reach. That's why I want to repeat that. They can reach that level. I believe that every one of them has it in themselves to be so amazing and so much better, and I want them to tap into that. But let's not fool ourselves. As they currently stand, no.
They have potential.
Exactly. There's potential in everybody, but not everybody's tapping into that potential.
That's good. You know, women, we're like, oh, I want a man who is this, the other, and we're not thinking, okay, the kind of man that you want, or the one you desire, what kind of a woman is he going to be looking for? And do you meet the standards that he's going to have? Because if you have high standards, then the man's going to have high standards too. That's often overlooked. That's a good point you have right there. In chapter 3 of the book, Stefan, you talked about, you know, women in church and leaving it all to God. What's your take on, you know, Christian women or believing women, good Christian women? Do you think that sometimes we actually hide in church and cover up with being spiritual to avoid dealing with issues that may actually be hindering us from enjoying the blessings that God has?
Absolutely. Church, Jesus, everything about it is sometimes used as a defense mechanism and used as a way to validate people running from their real issues, people hiding from their fear of even dealing with the dating process or the fear of having to put themselves out there. You know, the whole I'm waiting for God. Sometimes when someone says that, it's a genuine thing. It's them genuinely saying, I'm going to wait for God's timing and I'm going to do what I need to do in the process until that time comes. Whereas in other situations, I'm waiting on God is really, I don't want to have to do anything. I don't want to have to put it in any effort. I don't want to have to make myself vulnerable. So I'm going to remove all responsibility from me and put it all on God so that I can feel the pressure released from my back. And
How
it's good. It's not going to get that woman anywhere. It's going to prolong the process. And then, you'll have women say, and again, this is something that just popped in my head. They'll then try to validate their lack of effort by saying, well, every woman can't be married. There's not enough men in the world. Everyone's not going to get a man. And it's so you're limiting God by your own logic of how many men there are in this world. Not every woman is Christian. If you're a child of God, you don't think you have first dibs on getting a man if you follow the correct process. You are projecting these self-defeating prophecies because you don't want to put in the work.
That's good.
Anything we want to achieve in our life that is great, it requires effort, period. So if you're not willing to put in the work, then don't be surprised when you're not getting the results. But don't blame God, because that's not God's fault.
You said something so true, that relationships are work, and often we overlook that, like, oh, I want, where's my Boaz, or I want this health, and then we forget that it really takes work. Relationships it's an ongoing process, working on ourselves and working on the relationship itself. Talking about, again, you mentioned, that when people say I'm waiting on God, they don't want to take any responsibility. Let's talk about position versus pursuing as far as Boaz and the biblical perspective of preparing to be a wife is concerned.
Well, as far as positioning and pursuing, I think there is a huge misguided perception amongst a lot of women of God. They are not to pursue, or they are not to position themselves, that it's up to the man to chase after them. It's up to the man to make all the moves. They always love to cite he who finds a wife as their validating scripture, and it's wrong. It is absolutely wrong. He who finds a wife does not translate into he who chases after a woman. All right? Find be to stumble upon, to come upon someone. None of us, neither man nor woman of God, is supposed to be chasing after anybody but God. Period.
That's good. Amen.
Now, in regards to, well, then how do we meet each other? How do we find the person who's for us? How does the woman find her Boaz? Well, listen, even if we look at the story of Boaz and Ruth, Ruth to go lay down next to Boaz. If she doesn't do that, she never gets her husband.
And this starts some really interesting conversations in church. Like, are we supposed to just passively wait? And then there's, but Ruth actually went and laid down with Boaz. So that can open up a whole different discussion right there. But how do you advise women then to position themselves, or to prepare themselves to be the wife that they're supposed to be for the Boaz they're expecting?
Well, first thing they need to do is stop leasing their services out to men who are not for them. That's number one. Because as they continuously engage in these fruitless relationships that only create more damage emotionally, they make it harder for them to be positioned and prepared for that Boaz that is for them. I think also, again, like we talked about earlier, healing is extremely important, and mainly making yourself approachable. I'm not saying that women need to go out there chasing after men. Again, no one should be chasing after anybody. And I don't think a woman necessarily has to go be aggressively pursuing any men either. However, you have to make yourself approachable. You have to put yourself in position. Again, Ruth went to Boaz, laid next to him, told him what the deal was. He still had to seal the deal. He still had to put his effort to make this happen. However, she positioned herself. She did her part. So as a woman, if we translate that to 2015 society mannerisms, or whatever you want to call it, that would include smiling when you see a man that catches your interest, being willing to engage or start a conversation, give a compliment. You can do little things like that at least show interest. That's the key. You have to at least show interest. You don't have to necessarily ask for his number. If you want to, that's totally up to you. You don't necessarily have to ask him on a date. Again, if you want, it's totally up to you. However, you have to at least show interest. You cannot expect him to jump through a bunch of hoops, and especially when you're looking mean, looking like you don't want to be bothered, but you expect me to come talk to you? No, it's not going to work. I'm sorry.
Those are good tips you've given right there. You said something that, I want to pick up on that, women need to stop leasing their services to men or relations that are not going anywhere. And in your book, you talked about Boaz respecting Ruth. What are some things that women actually do that cause men to disrespect them?
The way they carry themselves. I'll say this. I get questions sometimes where women will say, well, at what point do you become a hoe to that man? Does he view you as this promiscuous woman or, in this negative light? Now, granted, we can sit here and say that as a woman of God, you should be avoiding having sex, but we know that realistically, a lot of people still are having sex. Mm-hmm. And what I would say to women is, if you have a track record of continuously sleeping with men, then yes, that's going to make you look bad. That is going to cause many men to lose respect.
What if she's not actually, besides that part of sleeping around or being promiscuous, what is another thing or something else that women can do knowingly or unknowingly that will cause men to disrespect them?
Listen, if a man comes in, I will say this, you don't make a man disrespect you, but you can cause a man to lose respect for you.
Oh, that's good.
And what would cause him to lose respect is you not respecting yourself. You not carrying yourself as a woman with standards. You being disrespectful to him. The way you talk to him or the way that you talk to people in general may cause him to lose respect. Your inability to know what you want. A lot of men do not like wishy-washy women. Women who seem to be confused and don't know what that just seems very weak to them. It can be a turnoff. So not being confident and sure of yourself, those things can contribute to a man slowly losing respect. But I think if she carries herself in a respectful manner, if she gives respect to others, then I think that as far as respect is concerned, and she shows she's a woman of standard, then she doesn't have to worry about that part of it. If he disrespects her regardless of that, then that's just a man with his own issues, nothing to do with her at that point.
Oh, brilliant answers. Great. Stefan, I normally have in the show something I call the IAT moment, which is inspiration plus application results in some transformation. And the idea behind it is that, if we hear a lot of good stuff like what we're sharing now, you're really giving us some really valuable nuggets, but then we don't do anything with it. Nothing changes, if there's no application. So what are 3 IAT steps that listeners can take this week that can actually help them either, break any relationship barriers or avoid what you call in your book, the heartbreak highway? What are 3 practical steps that you can share with us?
All right. One thing, and this is going to sound funny to some people, but I truly believe this can really help, is putting positive notes and reminders around you. Getting a sticky pad or writing on a piece of paper, whatever, post them up on your wall, your refrigerator, your bedroom, whatever. These small reminders and reminders of encouragement, reminders of what you need to be doing. When we feed ourselves positive messages, it's easier for us to maintain a positive mind state. We're so oblivious to the amount of negativity we take in from the world on an everyday basis. And we wonder why we struggle to stay on a better path. We have to balance that out by creating our own positive influences around us. And just creating small messages can really help. It's one of the reasons why I put so much energy into my Facebook page is because I know people need those messages sometimes. That one picture quote can be enough to turn the day for somebody, to turn their life around in some situation. So I think putting positive messages around you is a very good practical step to take. I think also getting everything off your chest, and this is going to require a little bit of work, but writing down how you feel about everything, getting it off your chest, or going to a professional, whether it's someone such as myself or a pastor or a counselor, whatever, talking out is going to really help release some things from your system. Again, we struggle with a lot of things because we keep it bottled up, and they're just festering there, and they're just making things worse. And it's like we're not truly healing because we won't get it off our chest. So taking that step, I think, is very important. Whether you write it down or go talk to somebody, get it off your chest.
And just remembering what you said earlier about the closet, the closet, stuffing things in there. Okay. And a third tip, the third thing you can advise us?
And you know what? I can't say this is, some may not consider this practical. However, since we are speaking to a lot of people who are men and women of God, prayer is important. But when I say prayer, some people are praying in the sense of, Lord, fix this. Lord, make this better. Lord, thank you. Amen. And it's like, okay, that's cool. I understand. However, I want people to start praying and asking questions, asking for guidance, trying to learn to hear the answer in their spirit. That is going to help big time. When you can get to a place of greater confidence of hearing from God, hearing from your spirit, you will be able to have more clarity in the direction you need to go in your life and how to handle certain situations. I can tell you that I have not gotten this far without talking to God and really seeking guidance in prayer.
That's beautiful.
We leave so much up to signs sometimes. Oh, I want to see a sign. And I always tell people, listen, if it's for a sign, you're still leaving it up to your interpretation to understand the sign. You may not get the sign correctly.
They want to see Gideon's fleece.
Exactly. It's like, listen, God can speak to you in your spirit. It's a process of learning how to embrace that answer and hearing it, but you can learn, and you should. Because I tell you this, a lot of people that have coached who have been married and gotten divorced, I will ask them, did you ever ask God if this is the person you should have married? And 99.9% of the time, the answer is no. They never asked. So I can tell you, had they done that, it could have changed everything. And that's why it is so important to seek direct guidance in your life, not direct guidance just from your pastor and your friends and other spiritual elders. I'm not trying to show them any lack of respect. However, they are not God. And don't always give you advice that applies for your specific path in life. Only God can do that. They are there to confirm, not to give the direct orders.
That's right. I like the way you said in your book that, when somebody's reading it, to go to God themselves and confirm what you're saying, if, that's what God is telling them. And you said something that really caught my attention. You said it's impossible to love others without God's help. So really and truly, I just believe that healthy relationships start with God, because it starts with our relationship with Him, which then affects our relationships with ourselves and then ultimately with others, as it says, to love others as you love yourself. That third tip that you've given, to seek God, that's really brilliant. While we're wrapping this up, Stefan, tell us, what is one life-changing advice that you have been given? Because you advise people a lot.
Honestly, it was accepting Christ in my life, to be honest with you. That day, I still remember it. I even remember going home that day, speaking to a friend of mine and saying to them, I feel like I'm about to walk through a door and my life will never be the same.
Wow. And did that happen?
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, oh my goodness, the amount of stories, the amount of things that have happened since then.
Yeah.
That changed everything. That changed everything. And people, like, I was a different man before. That's just the reality. If you didn't know what I came from, then you may not understand the impact of this new direction I went into. But it's been huge. It's been huge. So that to me has been life-changing without a doubt. The most life-changing advice I was given.
Brilliant. That's really great. And as far as you being a new person, I mean, it is written that if anyone is Christ, he is a new creation. So it's not too far off when you say that the change that you experience and the person you became is totally different. That's great to hear. Do you have some suggestions on how listeners can get in if they want to explore working with you more or what you do?
Yeah, if they want to work with me or learn more about me, they can go to my website, www.stefanspeaks.com. They can find me on Instagram at Stefan Speaks, on Twitter at Stefan Speaks, or Facebook, Stefan Speaks Relationships. And outside of that, I have a lot of things coming up, hopefully by this summer. I'll be dropping like 4 books before this summer comes. I fell behind. I felt like, it's been over a year since the Boaz book, and I haven't released anything. So I have a few things on the table that I want to get out there.
Awesome.
And start, working harder and just continue to try to spread the message and grow the business and help people. It's all mainly about helping people. I came into this new year saying, not about how much money I can make, it's about how many people I can help.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's what I'm trying to stay focused on, is just being more of a vessel to people who need it and helping others moving this in a much better direction.
And you're doing it. I mean, you're definitely the relationship guy. Like I said, I've been following you and listening. I've been on some of the webinars and listening to you and your book also. The first time I read, I was like, wow. Then the second time, like, wow. And then the third time is when you kind of start getting it, It's an amazing book. I mean, you definitely are a big help to people who desire those happy and healthy and fulfilling relationships. And as you say, they can and are ready to handle the truth, because really, if we're not honest with things, we'll keep getting the same results that we've been getting. You talked about 4 books coming up. You've written another book. I think it's for the men, the one of how to get any woman. I like the second part.
How to get a woman to have sex with you if you're her husband.
If you're her husband, exactly. That's a really interesting title. What came first, the Boaz or the one for the men?
The one for the men came first, actually.
Ah, okay. That's an interesting title. I was like, it's not addressed to me, so I didn't buy that one. But I'm looking forward to the books that you have in store for us in the summer. That's exciting. Okay, I guess we have come to the end of our brilliant conversation. I mean, I could continue asking you and interviewing you about all kinds of things. You really have some amazing insights. You said the best way for people to get in touch with you would be your website. And which social media do you prefer? Would that be Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook?
Instagram would be great.
Thank you so very much, Stefan. This was a really insightful call. I mean, I learned, even if I read the book 3 times, and talking to you again, you just drop really wisdom nuggets, and you do deliver the truth, but with some velvet gloves, so it doesn't really like, ouch, So appreciate the time that you took to come on the show. And I trust that, we will continue to take up your resources so that we can break those relationship barriers and get real and put away the facades like the way you so brilliantly bring across.
Okay, great. That sounds good.
It's been a pleasure having you on the call.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right, then. There you have it. We had an amazing conversation with Stephan Labossiere, the relationships guy. If you're a single lady and you have been asking God this question, where is my Boaz? Grab his book. I read it. It's amazing. We just covered the surface today in this interview. And if you're a guy, he's got a book for you too. And of course, if you're already in a relationship and you want to take it to the next level, follow Stefan. He's got some amazing, insightful blog posts for couples as well. Relationships are ongoing. We can always take them to the next level. We never get to the point where we believe that we have arrived. There's always another level that you can enjoy. Now, remember the quote at the beginning of this episode, repetition is the mother of learning and the father of action, which makes it the architect of accomplishment. Well, that interview is actually an encore. We had that interview a while back, and I just thought we listen to that again, because here's the thing, we can all do with a refresher. And so that's why I used Zig Ziglar's quote in the beginning, because this is a repetition. I was listening to it or I was doing something else. I normally multitask when I'm listening to podcasts. I get through a lot of audiobooks or podcasts and get to learn a lot while I'm doing something different, like doing the dishes or ironing or something that I don't really need to think. And so while I was listening to this episode, I was like, oh, I don't remember him saying that. Some of the points he was saying, I was like, oh, wow, that's a good point. I need to write that down, or I need to implement that. Although I'm the one that interviewed him, I'm still learning. So what I'm trying to say is that it's good for us to be learners, but not only just learners, but also to take action in what we hear and what we learn. And repetition, listening to an episode a second time or a third time, because every time you listen, you're going to hear something new. It's like when I read my Bible, sometimes I read a verse and I look at it and I see, hey, I marked that verse like 5 years ago. And then I'm looking at it again, I'm thinking, I never saw what I'm seeing now. So there's always something new based on how we're growing and how we're developing. Then we also perceive and we're also able to process and implement whatever we hear on a higher level. So if you enjoyed this interview, go check out the show notes. I've put in Stefan's website there. I've put in his books there. And I believe that you'll be blessed. His book is really good. I guess you could tell from the interview. I kept referring to it. All right. We would like to wish you a great Valentine. It's coming up the next week. Besides the Valentine's Day, I'd like to wish you the love that you deserve and desire. God bless. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
For more inspiration and the resources mentioned on this show, visit www.lbsuccess.com today.